The pediatrician handed me my daughter's blood type card at her baptism. That's when I knew my wife had been sleeping with my brother. It was supposed to be perfect. 200 people packed into St. Augustine's, the same church where Sarah and I had married 4 years earlier. Emma wore the christening gown my mother had saved for 37 years. Ivory silk yellowed just enough to look blessed rather than old. The morning lights streamed through stained glass, casting rainbow fragments across the marble font where Father Morrison waited with holy water that had traveled from the Jordan River. Sarah gripped my hand as we approached the altar, not in love, I realize now, but in warning. "Dearly beloved," Father Morrison began, his voice echoing off vaulted ceilings that had heard a century of promises, "we gather today to welcome Emma Grace into God's family." The ceremony flowed like honey, slow, sweet, sacred. My brother Michael stood beside us as godfather, his cologne too strong for morning, that same bergamot and cedar that would later haunt me from my own bedsheets. Sarah's sister held the candle, flame wavering like the truth nobody wanted to speak. Dr. Patricia Chen, our pediatrician and family friend, sat in the third row. She'd delivered Emma 9 months earlier, had been at our wedding, knew our medical histories like scripture. During the blessing of water, she stood and walked forward. "I'm sorry," she whispered, pressing something into my palm. "I should have told you sooner." A small white card, medical information card, blood type B negative. The words swam. I knew my blood type. O positive, Sarah's too, O positive. We'd laughed about it during premarital counseling, how perfectly matched we were, even our blood in harmony. 2 O's don't make a B, doctor. "Thomas?" Sarah's voice, sharp as shattered crystal. "The godparents are waiting." Father Morrison had stopped mid-blessing. 200 faces turned toward us, toward me holding that card like evidence at a crime scene I didn't yet understand I was standing in. Michael shifted his weight, Italian leather shoes clicking against marble. That sound, I hear it still, the metronome of betrayal keeping perfect time. "Continue," I managed, pocketing the card. Its edges cut into my palm through fabric, a paper wound that would never heal right. If you've ever discovered a lie in a sacred space, where even the walls expect truth, you know the sound your heart makes. Not breaking, that comes later. First, it's just confusion, like a child's puzzle with pieces from different boxes that someone insists belong together. The holy water touched Emma's forehead. She didn't cry. "I baptize you in the name of the Father." Michael's hand on my shoulder, steadying or claiming, I couldn't tell. "And of the Son." Sarah's breathing changed, rapid and shallow, a rabbit sensing the hawk's shadow. "And of the Holy Spirit." "Amen," sang 200 voices, while I held proof that the Holy Spirit wasn't the only ghost in this story. The reception was held in the church hall, tablecloths white as lies, centerpieces of baby's breath, and roses that would wilt before anyone admitted the truth. I found myself in the bathroom, studying that card like a map to somewhere I didn't want to go. B negative, rare, only 2% of the population. Neither Sarah nor I carried the gene for it. Someone had given Emma more than just life. She gripped my hand, not in love, but warning. That night, after the guests had gone and Emma slept in her nursery, I sat at our kitchen table with a calendar spread before me. Red pen in hand, like grading papers for a test everyone had already failed. The conception window, doctors had been specific about that, given Sarah's irregular cycles. March 10th to March 20th, they'd said, prime fertility window. I drew circles around dates, then drew arrows to where I'd been. March 12th through 18th, San Francisco, the medical conference where I presented on pediatric cardiology, 5 time zones away from our bed. The receipts were still in my filing cabinet, plane tickets, hotel charges, conference registration, paper trail of absence while someone else left no trail at all. March 15th, circled 3 times until the pen tore through paper. Sarah's day planner sat in the kitchen drawer where she kept coupons and carry-out menus, usually locked with a tiny key she wore on her bracelet. But tonight, it was open. Her handwriting, perfect Catholic school cursive, marking appointments and meetings. March 15th. Lunch with Michael. Discuss surprise party for Tom. My birthday is in September. The house made its nighttime sounds. Refrigerator humming, floorboards settling, the whisper of betrayal breathing through the walls. I found more evidence without looking for it. Credit card statements showing charges at Romano's, the Italian place downtown Michael loved, where he'd proposed to his ex-wife before she'd discovered his habits. Charges always on Tuesday afternoons, always for two, always when I was at the hospital for rounds. Sarah's iPhone charging on the counter. Her passcode had been our anniversary date until 3 months after Emma was born when she'd changed it. The laptop, though, she'd forgotten about the shared photo stream. Pictures uploaded automatically from her phone, selfies I'd never seen, her hair done differently, lipstick darker than she wore for me, background locations I recognized but had never visited with her. And one photo, timestamp March 15th, 2:47 p.m., her hand holding a wine glass, wedding ring prominent, but in the glass's curve reflected like a confession, Michael's face, distorted but unmistakable. March 15th, I was 3,000 miles away. Sunday dinner at Sarah's parents' house, a tradition carved in stone and expectation. The Victorian on Maple Street, with its wraparound porch and judgment, where Sarah's mother Linda presided over pot roast and propriety like a suburban queen. We all sat at the same table where Sarah had announced our engagement, our pregnancy, our lies, disguised as milestones. Michael was already there when we arrived, helping his mother, my mother-in-law, with the gravy. His sleeves rolled up, forearms that had held my wife while I'd been saving other people's children. The house smelled like rosemary and deception. "You're late," Linda observed, not looking up from the rolls she was placing in a basket lined with gingham. "Emma had a difficult morning," Sarah said, though Emma had slept until noon, peaceful as truth before testimony. The dining room held 20 years of family photos. Our wedding portrait centered above the mantel, Sarah in white, that meant something then, Michael beside me as my best man. We'd been brothers since I'd married into this family. Brothers. "Thomas looks tired," Michael said, passing the potatoes. His smile was perfect, veneers he'd gotten last year, $15,000 of dental work that made every expression look like an advertisement. "The hospital working you too hard?" "Just thinking," I said, cutting into meat that bled onto white china. "About blood." Sarah's fork paused midway to her mouth. "Shop talk at dinner?" Linda's disapproval was knife sharp. "Really, Thomas?" "It's fascinating, actually." I kept my voice conversational, the tone I used to explain procedures to parents. Blood types, how they're inherited, what's possible, what's not. Michael reached for his wine, his hand steady, but he reached too far, too fast. "For instance," I continued, 2 O-positive parents can only have O-positive children. It's genetics, simple as breathing. "Thomas." Sarah's voice carried warning like storm clouds carry rain. "Unless, of course, there's been a mistake. Or..." I looked directly at Michael. "Someone else is involved." The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. Linda's hand hovered over the butter dish. Sarah's father, Frank, who'd said nothing as always, cleared his throat. "What are you saying?" Linda's question came out strangled. I pulled the blood type card from my pocket, placed it beside my plate like a side dish nobody ordered. "Emma is B negative." Silence. The kind that happens after car crashes when everyone's checking if they're still alive. Michael smiled, teeth perfect, conscience absent. The law office of Brennan and Associates occupied the top floor of a glass building that reflected the city's compromises back at itself. Janet Brennan had handled my colleague's divorce, the one where his wife had emptied accounts while he was performing emergency surgery. She specialized in what she called high-conflict family law, which was a polite way of saying she knew how to fight dirty while keeping clean hands. "Adultery is irrelevant," she said after I'd laid out my evidence like surgical instruments. "Massachusetts is a no-fault state. Infidelity doesn't affect custody unless you can prove direct harm to the child." Her office smelled like leather and expensive coffee. The walls held law degrees and photos of her own family, husband, 2 kids, golden retriever, the life I'd thought I was building. "The blood type," I began, "proves you're not the biological father, yes, but you're on the birth certificate. You've been acting as her father. The court will consider you the legal father regardless of biology." The box of tissues on her desk was positioned perfectly, close enough to reach, far enough to maintain professional distance. I didn't need them. Not yet. "What about him? Michael? Is he seeking custody?" "I don't know what he's seeking. Sarah won't admit anything." Janet leaned back, her chair expensive enough not to squeak. Behind her, the city sprawled 20 stories below, lives intersecting and destroying each other in patterns too complex to map. "Here's what happens next," she said. "You file for divorce. Request primary custody based on being the primary caregiver. You said you do morning routines, doctor appointments?" I nodded. Every pediatrician visit, every vaccination, every fever at 2 a.m. while Sarah slept, and Michael was wherever men like him go. "Good. Document everything. Every pickup, every meal, every diaper change if she's still in them. The court favors stability for the child." "And if she fights?" Janet slid a retainer agreement across the desk. "Then we prove she's been prioritizing her affair over her child. Tuesday afternoons, you said? While Emma was where?" "Daycare, sometimes with her mother." "Perfect. Abandonment of parental duties for extramarital activities." She smiled, sharp as paper cuts. "Judges don't like that." I signed where she indicated, each signature a step away from the life I'd planned. "One more thing," Janet said as I stood to leave. "The brother-in-law. Any chance he'd testify?" Through her window, I could see the hospital where I worked, where I saved children who weren't mine while losing the one who was. Or wasn't. The mathematics of family had become too complex for simple blood. "No," I said, remembering his perfect smile at Sunday dinner. "Michael doesn't admit things. He just takes them." The elevator down felt like descending into something biblical, the kind of fall that requires witnesses and redemption. In the lobby, my phone buzzed. Sarah texting about dinner plans as if our life wasn't already digesting itself. As I walked to my car, I passed a father pushing a stroller, his daughter reaching for pigeons that scattered like secrets when exposed to light. He smiled at me, that universal nod of recognition between parents. I nodded back, wondering if he could see I was counterfeit, a father by paperwork rather than blood, loving a child who carried someone else's DNA like a letter addressed to another man's house. The parking garage smelled like exhaust and endings. My car was where I'd left it, between white lines that suggested order where none existed. The drive home would take 20 minutes through streets I'd traveled as a husband, a father, a fool who'd believed that marriage meant something more than shared real estate and the occasional Sunday dinner with people who knew the truth before you did. Adultery is irrelevant, unless you prove harm. The nursery at 3 a.m. is a museum of intentions. I sat in the rocking chair Sarah's mother had given us, the one she'd rocked Sarah in 30 years ago, its runners worn smooth by the weight of generations of women who knew how to keep secrets. Emma slept in her crib, breath steady as truth before cross-examination, unaware that her existence had become evidence. The mobile above her bed turned slowly. Paper birds we'd folded together during Sarah's bed rest when the pregnancy had been difficult and I'd taken leave to care for her. Origami cranes for luck, we'd said, 1,000 paper birds for a wish come true. I counted them now. 43. We'd never made it to 1,000, never made it to lots of things. The walls held pencil marks where we'd planned to track her height. The baby shoes on the dresser, never worn, bronze dipped by Sarah's aunt who believed in preserving everything, even the things that never walked anywhere. And on the small table beside the chair, Emma's drawings from daycare, crayon scribbles they called art, giving meaning to chaos. I picked up the most recent one, 2 stick figures and a smaller one between them. The teacher had written at the bottom in cheerful purple marker, Emma's family. But there were 3 adult figures, not 2. The third one stood slightly apart, taller, drawn in black crayon, while the others were blue and pink. No face, just a dark scribble where the head should be. Children see everything, even when they can't speak it. They document truth in crayon and construction paper, evidence inadmissible in court, but devastating in the heart. Her first word wasn't Dada, it was uncle. Marcus Webb's office was nothing like Janet Brennan's. Private investigator, the business card said, but his workplace was a converted storage unit in a strip mall between a vape shop and a 24-hour laundromat. The sound of washing machines provided a rhythm to our conversation, the spin cycle of other people's dirty laundry. 17 times in 3 months, he said, sliding a folder across the desk that was really just a door balanced on sawhorses. Always Tuesdays, always between 1 and 3 p.m. The photographs were time-stamped, watermarked, undeniable. Sarah entering the Marriott downtown, Michael's car already in the parking garage. The same hotel where we'd spent our first anniversary, where I'd surprised her with champagne and promises I'd kept. Hotel security footage is archived for 90 days. Amazing what $100 and a sob story about a cheating spouse will get you from an underpaid security guard. More photos, receipts. Room service for 2, always the same room, 314. Michael had a corporate account there, supposedly for client meetings. The credit card statements showed a pattern: room charge, 2 bottles of wine, late checkout fee. This one's interesting, Marcus said, pulling out a different photo. Gas station security footage. Sarah's car at a pump, Michael beside her, his hand on her lower back in a way that wasn't brotherly. Date stamp is March 15th, 2 hours after you left for your conference. The washing machines hummed their judgment. Someone's clothes tumbling clean, while mine would never wash right again. There's more. Marcus opened his laptop, angled it toward me. Email records. She was sloppy with her recovery folder. The messages loaded slowly, like watching a wound open frame by frame. Not love letters. That would have been easier. These were logistics, times, places, excuses to tell me, and one dated a month before Emma was born. What if it's yours? Michael's response, then we deal with it after. After, like Emma was a problem to be managed rather than a child to be loved. Is this enough? I asked. For divorce? Yes. For custody? Depends on the judge. Marcus closed the laptop. But there's something else. Your brother-in-law has a history. Another folder. Different women. 3 affairs documented over 5 years, all while he was married to his ex-wife. She'd hired Marcus first back when he worked for a bigger firm. She got everything in the divorce, Marcus said. House, alimony, the works. But no kids, so custody wasn't an issue. And now? Now he's doing it again, except this time there's a baby involved. Marcus leaned back, his chair squeaking protest. Men like him don't change. They just find new families to destroy. I wrote a check for his services, hand steady despite everything. Outside, the day was ordinary. People buying lottery tickets at the gas station, picking up dry cleaning, living lives where DNA matched expectation. One more thing, Marcus said as I reached the door. Your mother-in-law, Linda, she came here last week. I turned. What? Wanted to hire me, same job, follow her daughter. Said she needed to know the truth before it destroyed everyone. He shrugged. I told her I was already on the case. She left this. An envelope with my name in Linda's perfect Palmer script. Inside, a check for $10,000 and a note for Emma's future from someone who should have protected her better. 17 visits, always Tuesdays, always 2 hours. Linda opened the door before I knocked, as if she'd been standing behind it waiting. Her house on Maple Street felt different without the Sunday dinner crowd, smaller, sadder, like a stage after the actors have gone home. "I know why you're here," she said, leading me to the kitchen where all family business eventually arrived. Tea was already steeping, 2 cups, like she'd been expecting me all along. I knew at Christmas, 8 months pregnant, Sarah glowing in maternity photos by the tree, Michael playing piano, carols we'd all sung while something else played out in minor keys. How? Linda pulled out a small leather journal, its pages yellowed with age and secrets. "I keep track of cycles, all the women in my family, irregular. I taught Sarah to track hers when she was 16. She stopped being careful with her calendar when she thought I stopped looking. The tea was chamomile, meant to calm, but nothing would calm this. The dates didn't match," she continued. "When she announced the pregnancy in July, she said she was 8 weeks. But 8 weeks before, you were at that conference in Seattle, the pediatric symposium. You sent me that photo of the Space Needle. Mothers remember everything. Archive evidence in the hope they'll never need to present it. Why didn't you say anything?" Linda's hands wrapped around her cup like she was holding something fragile that had already broken. "Because I'm a coward. Because I thought maybe I was wrong. Because..." She stopped, tears finally coming. "Because Michael is my son too. Not by blood, but I've been his mother since you married Sarah. How do you choose between children?" From upstairs, a sound, footsteps in what had been Sarah's childhood room. Linda looked up, then back at me. "She's here?" "Came home this morning. Said you two were having problems. I told her problems have solutions, but lies just have consequences." She pulled something from her pocket, a small velvet box. "This was my mother's ring. I was going to give it to Emma on her 18th birthday, but now..." She opened it. A simple gold band with a small sapphire, the kind of ring women wore when promises meant something permanent. "Give it to her when she's older," Linda said, "from the grandmother who loved her enough to finally tell the truth." The afternoon light caught the stone, blue as Emma's eyes as the blood type that had started this unraveling. "There's something else," Linda said, voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Michael's ex-wife, Patricia, she called me last week, wanted to warn me. She's pregnant, says it's his." The kitchen clock ticked. Somewhere upstairs, Sarah moved around her childhood room, probably touching trophies and certificates from when she was someone else's daughter, before she became the woman who broke vows in hotel rooms on Tuesday afternoons. Does Sarah know? About Patricia? No, but she knows about the others. 3 other women during their, whatever this is. She knows and she doesn't care. Linda's voice hardened. That's when I knew I had to choose. And I choose Emma. I choose the innocent. I stood to leave, the ring box in my pocket next to the blood type card, evidence and inheritance weighing the same. "Thomas," Linda called as I reached the door. "The court date. When is it?" 3 weeks. I'll testify if you need me to." "Against your own daughter?" She smiled, sad as winter roses. "For my granddaughter. There's a difference. I knew since Christmas, forgive me, the mediation room at the family court building was designed to be neutral. Beige walls, no windows, a round table to prevent anyone from sitting at the head. But power doesn't need position. It radiates from evidence folders and the quality of lawyers you can afford." Sarah arrived with Arthur Blackwood, senior partner at Blackwood, Crane and Associates. Michael's money, I realized. Arthur had defended hedge fund managers and pharmaceutical executives, people who could afford to make problems disappear into legal language. Janet sat beside me, our evidence organized in color-coded folders like a diagnosis waiting to be delivered. The mediator, Dr. Elizabeth Hartley, had been recommended by the court, 15 years of experience in high-conflict custody cases. "We're here to discuss the best interests of Emma," Dr. Hartley began, her voice professionally warm, like a nurse explaining a painful procedure. "Both parties have requested primary custody." "My client has been the primary caregiver since birth," Janet began, sliding forward our first folder. Blue, for daily routines. "Every pediatrician appointment, every feeding logged, every developmental milestone documented." Arthur smiled, the kind that costs $500 an hour. "Mrs. Morrison is the biological mother. She's been on maternity leave specifically to bond with Emma. The child needs her mother." "The child needs stability," Janet countered, "which Mr. Morrison has provided while Mrs. Morrison was otherwise engaged. We have evidence of repeated abandonment for extramarital," "alleged," Arthur interrupted, "and irrelevant to custody considerations." Dr. Hartley raised a hand. "Let's focus on Emma's needs. I see here there's a question about paternity." The room shifted, tectonic plates of family realigning. Sarah's face stayed composed, but her hand went to her throat, touching a necklace I'd given her on our first anniversary. Still wearing it like evidence of something that used to matter. "Mr. Morrison has raised concerns about biological paternity," Janet said carefully. "We're requesting a DNA test to establish..." "To establish what?" Arthur's voice sharpened. "Mr. Morrison is on the birth certificate. He's acknowledged paternity. Biology is irrelevant to legal standing. It's relevant to the pattern of deception that makes my client question the mother's fitness." "Your client is having a mental health crisis," Arthur said smoothly. "Paranoid delusions about his wife's fidelity. We have concerns about his stability around the child." Sarah finally spoke. "I just want what's best for Emma." Her voice was perfect. Concerned mother, wounded wife. "Tom is a good father, but lately he's been erratic, accusatory. I'm worried." The mediation continued for 2 hours, words circling like sharks around the truth nobody would speak directly. Visitation schedules, child support calculations, division of assets that included a human being too young to know she was being divided. What matters more, keeping family peace or protecting the innocent? The answer becomes clear when you're sitting in a beige room fighting for the right to raise a child who might not share your DNA but has already inherited your commitment to her. "We'll need to involve a guardian ad litem," Dr. Hartley finally said, "someone to represent Emma's interests independent of either parent." "And the paternity test?" Janet asked. Dr. Hartley looked between us. Sarah was crying now, silently, the kind that looks beautiful and broken. I probably looked like what I was, a man discovering that family court is where love goes to be autopsied. "If Mr. Morrison insists, the court can order it." "But," she paused, choosing words carefully, "it may not change the legal situation, and it will definitely change Emma's life forever." "It already has," I said, the first words I'd spoken since we'd sat down. "The truth already exists. We're just deciding whether to acknowledge it." Arthur gathered his papers. "We'll see you in court then." As they left, Sarah looked back once. For a second, she was the woman I'd married, scared, young, holding too many secrets. Then Arthur's hand on her elbow guided her away, and she was someone else's problem to solve. "Your Honor, we request a paternity test." The courthouse on a Thursday morning felt like a hospital. Fluorescent lights, antiseptic smell, people waiting for news that would change everything. Room 447, family court, Judge Margaret Chen presiding. Janet had warned me about Judge Chen, fair but formal, followed law over feeling, the kind of judge who'd read every page of evidence and remembered details lawyers forgot. We sat at tables that faced the judge's bench like pews facing an altar. Sarah and Arthur on the left, Janet and I on the right. The court reporter's fingers poised over keys that would transform our pain into public record. In the matter of Morrison versus Morrison, custody petition for minor child Emma Grace Morrison, the bailiff announced. Judge Chen looked up from her files. I have reviewed the preliminary motions. Mr. Morrison, you've requested a paternity test? Yes, Your Honor, Janet responded. We have evidence suggesting... I've read the brief. Judge Chen's voice cut clean. Mrs. Morrison, do you consent to the test? Sarah whispered to Arthur. He stood. Your Honor, we see no relevance. I didn't ask about relevance. I asked about consent. Silence. Sarah's whisper again, urgent. Arthur's jaw tightened. We request that if a test is ordered, the results remain sealed until their relevance to custody can be established. Granted, the test will be conducted by court-appointed technicians. Results to be delivered sealed to this court in 7 days. The gavel came down once, sharp as truth. But the hearing continued, evidence presented like a slideshow of destruction. The photos from Marcus Webb, the hotel receipts, the timeline that didn't match. Sarah's lawyer countered with his own evidence. Photos of me at work, long hours that meant missed bedtimes. My obsession with the paternity question. A statement from a colleague saying I'd seem distracted, possibly depressed. Your Honor, Arthur said, building to his crescendo, we have serious concerns about Mr. Morrison's mental state. His fixation on this paternity issue, despite being the acknowledged father, suggests a break from reality that could endanger the child. What endangers the child, Janet shot back, is being raised in an environment of deception. Judge Chen raised her hand again. I'm ordering a guardian ad litem to assess the situation. Dr. Patricia Williams will interview both parents, evaluate the home environments, and make a recommendation to the court. Patricia, another Patricia. The universe seemed to only know a handful of names, recycling them through different women who held different pieces of the truth. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm ordering temporary shared custody pending the final hearing. Week on, week off, exchanges on Sundays at 6 p.m. Your Honor, both lawyers began, my decision is made. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks with the guardian's report and the test results. She looked at both of us, Sarah and me, the people who'd stood in a church and promised forever. Whatever the biological truth, Emma Morrison has 2 parents who claim to love her. Figure out how to do that without destroying her. The gavel came down final as diagnosis. Outside the courthouse, November wind cut through my coat. Sarah stood by a car I didn't recognize, new or Michael's, or another secret she'd been keeping. She walked over while our lawyers talked by the door. It doesn't matter, she said quietly. The test, whatever it says, she's still Emma, still ours. No, I said, watching leaves scatter across the courthouse steps like evidence in wind. She's Emma, but there is no ours. There hasn't been for a long time. She pulled her coat tighter. I loved you. That was real. Was it? Or was I just the stable one, the safe one, while Michael was, what, the exciting one, the dangerous one? The one who saw me, she said, then walked back to the car that wasn't ours, to a life that had never really been mine. 7 days until the envelope. 7 days until mathematics replaced mythology. The DNA results arrived on a Tuesday, of course. Everything significant in this story happened on Tuesdays, as if the week itself had chosen sides. The envelope was thick, official, sealed with tape that would show any tampering. Judge Chen opened it in chambers with both lawyers present. Sarah wasn't there. Arthur said she was with Emma. I sat between Janet and the court reporter, watching Judge Chen's face for any tell, any preview of what math and science had decided about love and law. She read silently, then looked up. The court has received the certified results from Laboratory Corporation of America. She paused long enough for the world to restructure itself. Probability of paternity between Thomas Morrison and Emma Grace Morrison. The court reporter's fingers hovered. 0.00%. Probability of paternity 0.0%. The courtroom was full for Michael's testimony. Word had spread through the suburban ecosystem, church groups, school parents, the country club where Michael held court at the bar every Friday. They came dressed for scandal, pretending concern while feeding on the collapse of something that had looked perfect from the outside. Michael took the stand in a suit that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Navy blue, perfectly tailored, the kind of armor money buys when you're about to lie under oath. The bailiff held out the Bible, worn leather that had absorbed thousands of promises, most of them broken before the witnesses left the building. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Michael's hand on the Bible, steady as his smile. "I do." Janet approached him like a surgeon approaching a tumor, careful, precise, knowing exactly where to cut. "Mr. Brennan, what is your relationship to Emma Morrison?" "She's my niece, my brother-in-law's daughter." "Your brother-in-law and your sister-in-law, Sarah Morrison. What's your relationship with her?" Arthur stood. "Objection, relevance. Goes to the witness's credibility and potential bias, Your Honor," Janet responded smoothly. "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Brennan." Michael shifted slightly, the first crack in his composure. "Sarah is my sister-in-law. We're family." "Family." Janet let the word hang, then moved to our evidence table. "I'd like to enter into evidence Exhibit F, hotel records from the Marriott downtown showing 17-room rentals charged to Mr. Brennan's corporate account, all on Tuesday afternoons over a 3-month period." The murmur through the gallery sounded like prayer before confession. "Can you explain these charges?" "Client meetings. I'm in commercial real estate. We often meet at hotels." "Client meetings." Janet pulled out another folder. Exhibit G, security footage from the Marriott, dated March 15th. Can you identify the people in this image? On the courtroom screen, grainy but clear enough, Michael and Sarah entering room 314, his hand on her back, her face turned up to his, the body language of people who've done this before. Michael stopped, calculating. "I don't recall." "You don't recall. Let me refresh your memory. Exhibit H, room service records. 2 bottles of Pinot Noir, chocolate-covered strawberries charged to room 314 on March 15th at 2:47 p.m. Still no memory?" Arthur stood again. "Your Honor, Mr. Brennan isn't on trial here." "No," Janet agreed, turning to face the gallery, making sure everyone saw what came next. "But he might be. Mr. Brennan, are you the biological father of Emma Morrison?" The courtroom held its breath. Michael looked at Sarah for the first time since taking the stand. She was crying, but not the pretty tears from mediation. These were ugly, desperate, the kind that come when you realize the person you trusted to keep your secrets is about to trade them for his own salvation. "I refuse to answer." "On what grounds?" Michael's lawyer, who'd been sitting in the gallery, stood. "My client invokes his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination." "Self-incrimination." Janet smiled, sharp as winter. "Your Honor, we request a court-ordered paternity test for Mr. Brennan." Judge Chen looked down at Michael, then at the crying woman who was either his sister-in-law or something else entirely. "Mr. Brennan, you can refuse to answer, but this is a civil matter. Your refusal can be considered by the court, and if a paternity test is ordered and you refuse, that too can be considered. Then I refuse to all of it." He stepped down from the stand, walking past Sarah without looking at her, past me without acknowledgement, past 200 people who now knew what kind of man wore $1,000 suits to family court. At the door, he turned back once, that perfect smile finally gone, replaced by something that might have been fear or might have been the first honest expression I'd ever seen on his face. I invoke the Fifth Amendment. Dr. Patricia Williams had been a guardian ad litem for 15 years. She'd seen families dissolve in every possible configuration, she told me during our interview. But Emma's case was special, she said, because Emma herself was special. Now she stood before the court with her report, 40 pages that reduced our family to behavioral observations and psychological assessments. She wore glasses on a chain, the kind of woman who looked like she baked cookies but could dismantle your lies with a question about bedtime routines. Your Honor, I've spent considerable time with Emma over the past 2 weeks. She's a remarkably observant child, despite being only 18 months old. Her artwork at daycare is particularly revealing. The screen showed Emma's drawings again, stick figures in crayon, but Dr. Williams had added labels based on her conversations with the daycare teachers. This figure, she pointed to the blue one, Emma consistently identifies as Dada. She reaches for it when asked about home. This pink one is Mama, but notice it's always drawn smaller, sometimes off to the side. And the third figure, Judge Chen asked. That's what's interesting. The teachers say Emma draws it but won't name it. When asked, she just covers it with her hand or turns the page. Sarah made a sound, not quite a sob, not quite a gasp. The sound of understanding that your child has been keeping your secrets before she could even speak them. In my home visits, Dr. Williams continued, I observed distinct differences in Emma's behavior. At Mr. Morrison's apartment, she's relaxed, playful. She sleeps through the night. At Mrs. Morrison's current residence, she's staying with her parents. Emma is clingy, anxious. She's had night terrors. Could that be normal adjustment to the separation? Arthur asked. It could, but there's more. Dr. Williams pulled out a worksheet, the kind they use in child psychology. We do an exercise called My Family, where children place figures representing family members. Emma consistently places the father figure in the center, herself next to him, and the mother figure varies, sometimes close, sometimes at the edge of the board. Another image on screen. A child's worksheet, simple figures on a board, but the story it told was complex as any testimony. Most telling, Dr. Williams said, adjusting her glasses, is this drawing from yesterday. Emma was asked to draw home. She drew 2 houses. When asked which one was home, she pointed to the one with the blue figure, her father. The other house with the pink figure she called visit. What's your recommendation? Judge Chen asked. Dr. Williams looked at both of us. Emma has formed a secure primary attachment to Mr. Morrison. While she loves her mother, the disruption to that primary attachment would cause significant psychological harm. I recommend primary physical custody to Mr. Morrison with generous visitation for Mrs. Morrison. Despite the biological factors. Your Honor, in my experience, biology creates children. Love creates parents. Emma knows who her father is. She's been telling us all along. Sarah's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. She shook her head, then stood. I'd like to address the court. Judge Chen nodded. Proceed. She drew 2 daddies, one crying, one gone. Sarah walked to the space between the tables. No podium, no barrier between her and judgment. She'd worn the dress from our rehearsal dinner, blue like she knew I'd loved, like Emma's drawings of stability. Your Honor, I made mistakes. I fell in love with the wrong person at the wrong time. But that doesn't make me a bad mother. Her voice was steady, the way it had been during our vows, when promises still meant something. Tom is a good father, the best. He does the morning routine because he's always been better at mornings. He knows which stuffed animal helps her sleep, how she likes her eggs, that she needs her socks on before her pants, or she cries. She paused, gathering herself. I know these things too. I wasn't the one doing them. Why not? Judge Chen asked, not unkindly. Because I was lost. Postpartum depression, the therapist said. But it was more than that. I was lost in my marriage before Emma came. Tom worked 18-hour days. He saved other people's children while I ate dinner alone. Michael paid attention. Said the things Tom used to say. Made me feel like I mattered instead of like I was just the wife of someone important. She turned to me then, the first time she'd really looked at me since this started. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to remember that Emma needs both of us. Whatever the DNA says, you're her father. You're the one she reaches for, but I'm her mother. That has to count for something. It does, Judge Chen said, but the court has to consider what's best for Emma. Sarah nodded, then said the words that changed everything. I'm pregnant again. The courtroom erupted. Arthur jumped up, apparently as surprised as everyone else. Janet grabbed my arm, keeping me in my chair when every instinct said to run. How far along? Judge Chen asked over the noise. 12 weeks. And the father? Sarah looked at where Michael had been sitting, the empty chair that told its own story. I don't know. That's the truth. I don't know. But then she pulled out a piece of paper, ultrasound images, the ghost of another child who would grow up in the shadow of this moment. But this baby deserves a chance. Emma deserves a sibling. We could be a family, Tom. Not the one we planned, but still a family. You could raise them both. I won't fight you. Joint custody. You take the lead. I can't lose everything. She was crying now, ugly and real, the kind that comes when you realize you've gambled everything and the house always wins. Your Honor, she continued, I know I have no right to ask for mercy, but Emma loves me, even if it's different from how she loves Tom, even if I'm just visit instead of home. Please don't take that away. Please. She walked back to her table, broken but not quite defeated. The courtroom was silent except for the court reporter's keys, turning pain into permanent record. I'm pregnant again, and this time, Judge Chen called a recess. 30 minutes that felt like 30 years. Janet and I sat in a small conference room that smelled like old coffee and difficult decisions. She's desperate, Janet said. The pregnancy announcement was calculated. She's trying to complicate the narrative. It's already complicated. Not legally. The law is clear. Best interests of the child. The guardian's report is unambiguous. Through the window, I could see the playground across from the courthouse. Parents pushing children on swings. The simple rhythm of up and down. The trust that someone will always push you back up when you come down. What happens to the new baby? Janet looked at me carefully. That's not your problem. It's Emma's sibling. Maybe. If Michael doesn't claim it. If Sarah doesn't terminate. If a lot of things. Emma drew two daddies, I said. One crying, one gone. I don't want to be either. When we returned to the courtroom, something had shifted. Sarah was alone at her table. Arthur had left, his duty done, or his patience exhausted. She looked smaller, younger, like the girl I'd met at that hospital fundraiser 8 years ago when we'd both believed in different futures. Judge Chen returned, and the gallery fell silent. I've reviewed all the evidence, the guardian's report, and the testimony provided. This is a difficult case, complicated by deception, betrayal, and a child who deserves better than the circumstances of her conception. She looked at Sarah. Mrs. Morrison, you've admitted to adultery, to deception, and to prioritizing your affair over your parental duties. These are serious factors. Then at me. Mr. Morrison, you've been the primary caregiver, the stable presence, and despite learning you're not Emma's biological father, you've continued to fight for her. That speaks volumes. However, she continued, the court must consider all factors. Mrs. Morrison is pregnant. While that doesn't affect Emma's custody directly, it does affect the family dynamic Emma will grow up in. She lifted the gavel, held it suspended like time itself had paused. The court awards primary physical custody to Mr. Morrison. Mrs. Morrison will have visitation every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. Child support is waived given the custody arrangement. Mr. Morrison will retain the family home for Emma's stability. The gavel came down. Final, decisive. Additionally, Judge Chen continued, given Mr. Brennan's refusal to participate in paternity testing and his invocation of the Fifth Amendment, the court finds it reasonable to conclude he may be Emma's biological father. This will be noted in the record should future proceedings become necessary. Sarah made that sound again, not sob, not gasp, but something between, the sound of a life restructuring itself around loss. Mrs. Morrison, the judge said not unkindly, you have another chance with your new child. Learn from this. Mr. Morrison, she turned to me, Emma is lucky to have you. Biology doesn't make a father. Showing up does. Custody awarded to the psychological parent. The first birthday after the verdict, we called it Emma's choosing day. She was too young to understand why she had two birthdays now, the one on her birth certificate and the one when the court said she was mine by choice rather than chance. The apartment was smaller than our old house, but full of intentional joy. No portraits of a marriage that had failed, no rooms that echoed with arguments. Just Emma's drawings covering the refrigerator, her toys in organized chaos, the life we were building one routine at a time. Linda came early to help set up. She'd testified in the end a mother choosing truth over comfort. She brought the cake herself, chocolate with strawberry filling, Emma's favorite, with 2 candles because Emma insisted she was too much now. Sarah asked to come, Linda said quietly while Emma napped, just to drop off a gift. She has her scheduled visit Sunday. I know, but birthdays are for people who show up consistently, not just when it's convenient or camera ready. Linda nodded, understanding. She'd made her own choice about what family meant, and it had cost her 1 daughter while saving a granddaughter. The guests were small in number but large in meaning. My colleague David and his husband, who'd become Emma's honorary uncles. The daycare teacher who'd noticed Emma's drawings before anyone else understood their significance. Marcus Webb, the private investigator who'd become something like a friend, bringing his own daughter, who was a year older than Emma, know Michael. He'd moved to Chicago, supposedly for work, but really for escape. His name wasn't mentioned, had become like a dead relative, acknowledged in history, but not in present tense. When Emma woke from her nap, she ran straight to the living room, where we'd strung lights low enough for her to touch. "Pretty," she announced, then noticed the presence and squealed in a pitch only toddlers can achieve. "Daddy," she said, pulling me down to her level, "why do I have 2 birthdays now?" I'd practiced this answer with the child psychologist, how to explain truth in terms a 2-year-old could grasp. Because you're extra special. 1 birthday for when you came into the world and 1 for when you became my daughter forever. Forever? And a day. She seemed satisfied with this, the way children accept magic as reasonable explanation. Then she asked the question I hadn't prepared for. "Where's Uncle?" The room went quiet. Linda turned away. Even Marcus's daughter seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. "Uncle had to go away," I said carefully. "Sometimes people have to leave." Emma considered this with the seriousness only toddlers can manage. Then she said something that broke and rebuilt my heart in the same breath. "You don't leave." "No, baby, I don't leave." "Good." She patted my face with sticky hands that had already found the frosting. "You're my daddy, not leave daddy." The adoption papers were in my desk drawer, ready to file once Michael's absence became legal abandonment. Sarah had agreed not to contest, understanding that legal fiction sometimes aligns with emotional truth better than DNA ever could. We sang Happy Birthday twice, once for each birthday, and Emma blew out candles with more spit than breath. When she opened Linda's gift, it was a photo album. Not the old one full of wedding photos and false starts, but a new one. The first picture was from today. Emma on my shoulders, both of us laughing at something beyond the frame. Probably Linda making faces behind the camera. "For the family you're choosing to be?" Linda said quietly. As the party wound down and guests left with their slices of cake wrapped in napkins, Emma fell asleep on the couch, clutching the stuffed rabbit that had been her first birthday gift from me, back when I thought she was biologically mine. Now I knew better. She was mine because she reached for me in the dark, because I knew she needed her socks first, because love is a choice you make every morning, not an accident of genetics. Sarah's gift had been delivered by courier, a silver frame with no photo, just a note. For when she asks about her mother, tell her I loved her enough to let her father raise her. I put it on Emma's shelf, empty for now, waiting for a day when the story would need telling in full. But not today. Today was for chosen family, for second birthdays, for the decision that showing up matters more than DNA. Linda helped me clean up while Emma slept. We worked in comfortable silence, the kind that comes when you've survived the same storm from different boats. "Tom," she said finally, "I need to tell you something. About the new baby. Sarah had tests done. It's not Michael's." I stopped wiping the counter. "How do you know?" "Because Michael had a vasectomy 3 years ago. His ex-wife told me during the divorce. Sarah doesn't know. She's been living with the uncertainty, thinking, hoping. I don't know what she's hoping." "Whose is it?" "Does it matter? It's hers. She'll raise it alone or with whoever she can convince to stay. That's her choice. Your choice is Emma." She was right. My choice was asleep on the couch, drooling slightly, perfect in her imperfection, mine in every way that mattered. That night, after everyone had gone and Emma was in her bed, I sat in the rocking chair in her room. The same chair from our old house, the one thing I'd insisted on keeping. The origami cranes still hung from her mobile, 43 paper birds that would never make it to 1,000 but didn't need to. On her dresser, the bronze baby shoes still sat, never worn, preserving the promise of first steps that had already been taken. She'd walked at 11 months, straight to me across the courtroom daycare while we waited for another hearing, her first independent journey ending in my arms. The blood type card that had started everything was in my desk, filed under medical history. B negative, rare, like the love that survives betrayal, that chooses connection over genetics, that shows up every morning despite having every reason not to. Emma stirred, opened her eyes briefly. "Daddy?" "Right here, baby. Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Emma." She closed her eyes again, secure in the knowledge that I'd be there when she woke. And I would be, every morning, every nightmare, every birthday, both of them, every moment that mattered and all the ones in between. The motif that had haunted this story, "We don't leave," had transformed from threat to promise. Sarah had left. Michael had left. But I had stayed, and in staying had discovered that family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shows up when the blood tests come back negative and loves you anyway. Tomorrow there would be challenges, questions about mothers and uncles and why families look different. There would be Sarah's supervised visits and the awkwardness of exchange. There would be the new baby and what that meant for Emma. But tonight there was just this: a father by choice, a daughter by love, and the family we were building from the materials left after everything else had burned. The last paper crane on the mobile turned slowly in the air from the heating vent, catching light from the hallway. 43 birds. We'd never make 1,000, but maybe that had never been the point. Maybe the point was just this: staying when leaving would be easier, choosing love when DNA says you don't have to, becoming the father someone needs rather than the one biology intended. You chose me, Daddy. That's better than blood. Indeed it was. Share your own story of chosen family, how love transcended blood in your life. Because sometimes the best families are the ones we build after the first one falls apart.